Hi everyone, I'm not good at lying, and welcome back to A Dark Secret. We had just left off with the protagonist here giving birth. Pretty excited, because I really liked this game. Anyways, let's go ahead and get back to it. I mean, she really wouldn't, but I think it might be the right thing to do. Alright, let's do it. Here, this is what you caused. Her parents gave a quick look. She could see how they planned on turning away again right away, but the little wrapped up bundle in her hands caught their attention. Say hello to your grandchild. Her voice was so strong and slightly sarcastic. She didn't show any of the pain it caused her to show her newborn to her parents. For a moment, everything and everyone was quiet. Shiria in silent expectation of a reaction, her parents in the calm of shock. Then her mother got up, tears welling in her eyes, and fled the building. She smashed the door behind her, leaving Shiria alone with her father. He blankly stared at the closed door, holding his head in the palms of his hands. It seemed as if he struggled to make up his mind and keep his emotions under control. After a while, Shiria decided she didn't want to stay out in the kitchen any longer and left for her room. She hadn't closed the door behind her yet when quick steps behind her approached. Her father was after her. In fear and surprise, Shiria quickly turned around to face her father, her baby in her arms. Without a word, he took the child from her and threw the little girl across the room the opposite wall. Whoa. The fuck, man? Both mother and daughter cried out in equal fear and pain. With all the strength left in her, Shiria threw herself at her father in an attempt to protect her beloved child. It was in vain. After everything that had happened on that day, she couldn't stand a chance against a grown man with the full strength of his hatred. Her father only turned to her for a second and pushed her away from him with both hands. She fell hard with her head on the hard wooden floor. Remaining conscious with all of the strength left in her, she knew what was going to happen. She knew it the moment she looked up, unable to find the strength to raise again, and saw her father approach the child with a vase in his hands. Oh, I don't even really want to continue. Oh man. The moment he stroked the little girl's head, the newborn looked at her mother, and her mother looked back at her. Then the vase hit the baby's head one time, then another, and one more. The child's eyes closed just a little bit, not entirely, and her struggle came to an end. Even in death, the eye contact between mother and daughter appeared to not be broken. Then Shiria began to realize what had just happened. The one and only love in her life had been eliminated. Killed. Murdered. Her head sank back down to the floor, finally breaking the bond between hers and her child's eyes. She stared at the ceiling. Darkness began to emerge, creeping up from her legs towards her head, embracing her mind and invading it. Dead. Dead! Ed. She sobbed for a moment only. Then the darkness began to pierce her heart. Her face turned black, blank, emotionless. Dead. She repeated. All of a sudden, something changed. She opened her heart for the darkness. Her last word before passing out was only a whisper in the gloom of pain. Death. With that murmur, equally fact and promise, something broke within her. If like is like a tornado, then some are born on the inside, calm and tranquil, the eye of the storm. Some are born on the turbulent fringes, some are yanked from serenity by circumstance. What you did to me was life-changing. Now I will take yours. In a word, run. You marveled at how easily you could pierce my flesh. I relish the speed at which my blade finds your heart. You should thank me. I yearned for it to end, for death to come. Now for you, there is no escaping it. You took me from the light, plunged me into darkness. You slit my wrists, I'll slit your throat. I'm not going to make you suffer. I'm not going to make you scream. I'm not going to make you pray for death. I'm going to make you pray for life. When Shiria woke up, she, for the first time since everything had begun, felt no pain. There was only a grim determination which she, at that point in time, could not explain. Even upon looking at her dead child, she felt nothing but anger. There were no more tears welling in her eyes, no more sickness in her stomach, and no more pain in her heart. She walked up to the baby, kneeled down, and picked Kyla up. After wrapping her up in a blanket she could find in the room, she held the child to her breast and left the house through the window in her room. Once outside, she was stunned by the intensity of the sunlight and held for just a minute. Then, when she had given her eyes the chance to adjust to the change, she looked around and began to run. She turned right, and instead of leaving the small town, ran further into it. Without realizing that she had run in circles multiple times, she finally found herself in a closed area and stopped in exhaustion. Falling to her knees, she dropped the bundle with the child next to her and bent forward to catch her breath. Without moving a bit, she dug her hands in the slightly wet earth in front of her. Hesitant, she began to dig slowly, but soon kept speeding up until she had dug a huge hole in front of her. The sun was already fading, while before it had been high up in the sky, and finally Shiria realized she had dug the entire afternoon until nightfall. Looking down her arms, she realized that they were covered in deep scratches, and some of her fingernails were broken. She didn't waste a moment caring for it, having carefully put the bundle that included her daughter into the pit. She closed the hole again, burying the child that had been too young to die under a pile of earth. When she was done, she grabbed the next stone she could find and dropped it on the grave in order to have the possibility to find it and replace the stone with a proper gravestone someday. Without shedding a tear, she got up and looked around the area where she was. In her mind, she realized that she would be worried she had buried her baby in someone's garden, or that someone had seen her. But she could not bring her emotions to follow the worry. The twilight-covered area with strange shadows as the young woman turned around to look at the place where she was. There was no doubt she was standing in front of a large mansion, which probably belonged to some rich family. Shiria held her breath. Then she noticed it. The windows were covered with wooden planks, the doors barricaded and nailed shut. Is it abandoned? Shiria's heart began to beat faster. Excitement began to rise inside her as she approached the old building and gazed through a crack in one of the wood planks. The inside was covered in cobwebs and a thick layer of dust. It is abandoned. Shiria was surprised. She had no idea where in town she was. Neither had she ever been here, yet she managed to find one of a handful of abandoned buildings within this large village and hadn't even taken a lot of searching. Careful not to make any sound, she inspected the layers of the planks and rocks that covered the back door. It seemed solid at first, but when she dug down on the right side of it, she uncovered a few loose rocks, which she could easily move. She slowly pushed them to the side and crouched a bit into the hole she created. To her surprise, there were more unsolid rocks and branches inside, so she began to shove these to the side, which she believed to be necessary for getting towards the door. It only took a little time until she found a huge rotten plank with ancient-looking handle. She put her hand on it and pushed with a little strength. The door, against her expectations, did not break in immediately. She had pushed a piece of wood the size of her hand out of the door. This is going to be even easier and more quiet than I thought. She began breaking small pieces out of the door until she had a hole the size that she could crouch through. Behind her, she put the stones and planks back in place in order to cover the entrance and hide that she had been there. Not that she would expect anyone to come and look at this building anymore. She crawled through the hole and looked up. Once she had made a step into the mansion, it turned extremely light. At first, she was blinded by the dust and light, but what she saw when she regained parts of her sight was breathtaking. The reason it had been turning light was a few lamps hanging up from the ceiling in a regular pattern. Every one of them was glowing in a white light, covering the room in a comfortable gloom. Pillars separated the room and created 3 almost equal chambers, connected and parted at the same time. Wherever a pillar stood, the ceiling appeared to reach towards it, to embrace it. That created waves in the ceiling which Shiria had never equally seen elsewhere before. While the ceiling seemed to consist of round stones in different shades of brown, the walls were built of grayish bricks, which were wonderfully linked with white lines in and around every single stone. The floor appeared to be made of some of the same bricks that had been used for the walls also, but every stone in the floor was unique, with different size and color ranging from blackish gray to light brown. Silver and golden ornaments covered the ceiling, and pillars and decorative lines and symbols. Shiria wondered whether they had a meaning. It was only now that Shiria discovered the grave in the back of the left part of the large hall. She gasped in fearful surprise, but curiosity struck, and she slowly approached it. The strange light covered the path, and she felt as if she were dreaming when she stood next to the old stone grave and looked down on it. For a while, she just stood there and observed the grave. With a sarcastic grin, she had to admit to herself she was expecting something to rise from it and chase her out of its home, but nothing alike happened. The grave remained still, peaceful. Silver moonlight flooded through a small window in the wall behind the grave and let the ancient stone construction shine in a magical aura. No sound managed to break through the walls of silence in that hall, and Shiria's rhythmic breath echoed unnaturally along in the room. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Shiria placed her hand on the old rock and ran her finger down one of the gaps time had scratched into the stone board. She held her breath in expectation of something to happen, but nothing did. The magical atmosphere remained, but not a thing changed on the grave. Shiria sighed and suddenly felt very tired. All the digging for her baby's grave, the tension after, and the excitement of finding a new home had worn her out, and she sat on the ground next to the grave, leaning against the comfortably cool stone wall. Not a minute had gone by when she had already fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. I don't know what to think, guys. When she woke up, she felt calm. Looking around the room, she saw the grave again in the mostly empty room of the basement. The sight immediately increased her tension. In a way, she felt relieved that she truly managed to get away from her home, but she did not yet feel completely safe in this unexplored area. Slowly, she pushed herself up onto her feet, using the grave to support herself. For a moment, she struggled as the world began to spin in a slow but rhythmic blur. But as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. When she felt halfway comfortable standing on her feet, she shuffled towards the central one of the three chambers. Despite her expectations to find the rooms full of different things, she found them completely empty. There was no table, no chair, no barrel, not even a piece of stone or anything that she had expected in an abandoned place like this. The layer of dust on the ground remained unbroken. Strangely, Shiria couldn't find a single print in the thick gray mass on the ground except her own. It completely covered every inch of the ground, not even interrupted by signs of a mouse or spider digging its way through the material. In some way, the lit-up empty rooms had a frightening effect on Shiria. She quickly turned away without paying attention to the third part of the room, and approached the heavy wooden door leading to the rest of the mansion, which was located in the central wall of the middle room. Okay. With slightly shaking hands, she forced the handle down and with some effort pushed the door open. The old wood seemed as if it hadn't been opened in ages. For a little while, she just stood there, staring at the image in front of her. It was nighttime. Through the open spaces in the walls and the ceiling, she could see the stars on the clear sky above, like small, shining lanterns in the distance. They lit up the place and uncovered a wide staircase and walls covered with ornaments. Statues of people who she thought to be dead for a long time were placed along the walls, giving the place protection with their dead, cold glares. To her surprise, the staircase led up, as well as further down. There's a lot of words in this game, guys, but I'm still really liking the story. That is horrible, what happened at the beginning, but I hope you guys liked the video. If you did like the video, comment on the video, subscribe to the video, or me. I hope you guys are having a great night, a great week. I hope you guys are ready for the weekend, which is coming a little early this week because it's a short week, and I'll see you guys later.